It is time for your WIN podcast for super busy professionals sharing transformational moments. Your host, Chu Tang.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to your WIN podcast. Today I have my special guest, Annette, with us. Welcome, Annette.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So, Annette, I have only one question for the podcast. Would you describe a scene in your life where you felt a transformation and then you changed your life forever since that moment?
Oh, I would love to. I am a type 1 diabetic since the age of 2. All of my growing up years, I was told I was going to die young and never reach adulthood, only because they didn't know how to treat diabetes way back then. And I was in and out of the hospital all the time and near death on many occasions. And I had just kind of gotten used to it and said, well, I guess that's all I can do. I don't know what else how else can I change this? Because I wasn't being given the correct information. And then one day I met a new endocrinologist, a diabetic doctor, and he didn't quite use these words, but in hindsight, I feel like he looked at me and he said, oh boy, she needs help. And he was right. I needed help. And he began a slow but intense education, information process with me where he would unpack, this is what diabetes is. This is what it's doing to your body. This is what you need to do in order to outlive that death sentence that you were given, and in order to live a life that it can be very full and very enjoyable. And it was a long process. It didn't happen overnight. But during this, every time I would get some kind of side effect from diabetes, he would sit me down and he would say, this is normal for diabetics. This happens. This is why it's happening. Here's what we can do to treat it. So he was just giving me all kinds of kind of behind the scenes information that I had never been given before. So I wasn't either overreacting or underreacting when things would start happening to me, because I had the knowledge that he had given me to be able to make those changes. And I am here to say, I don't even remember, I think it's been about 40 years, 35 at least years ago, that I first met that doctor. And I'm here to say I'm still alive, thank God. And that's right. The early death sentence on me were wrong, at least for right now. But that really began what I do call and consider my transformation, because I began to think there's nothing I can do about this. And life is going to be very horrible for me. It already had been pretty challenging. Over to, wait a minute, I can live with this. I can live the kind of life that I want to. I can be active and engaged and involved with friends and family and my church and all of those different things. And it really did a 360 in my thinking. And that's where it had to start. It had to start up there, because until I grasped what he was saying, and not even, just the detailed things, but the realization you can live I don't like to use the word normal, because nobody's normal. Everybody's different. But you can live a life that is fully engaging, involved, and intentional. And I began to think that way, and that's how I live my life today.
Wow. And then you're helping people too, right?
Exactly. I take my message and I coach and I speak and I share whenever I can, wherever I can, how people can do that, literally that I like to call it rewriting your story, or the end of your story, because the end of my story looked bleak, but with that doctor's help, I was able to rewrite it. And that's what I want to help other people do as well.
Is that doctor still alive?
Pretty sure. Yeah. He's down in Southern California.
And
I'm here in Oregon, but I tried to connect with him a couple of years ago just to let him know I was still alive.
Still alive.
yeah, but he was alive then. So I think he's still practicing. So
wow.
Yeah.
And who introduced him to you?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I was actually, because I had no medical insurance, because at the time, if you had a pre-existing condition,
they don't.
Nobody wanted to insure you. That was way back in the 80s. So I was going to the City of Hope that's there in Southern California, and they had a diabetic area. And he happened to be a doctor there at that time. There weren't very many doctors to choose from, but he was one of them. And one day after, I think I'd been seeing him for about 2 years, he said to me, I have some bad news and some good news for you. I'm always like, oh, when someone says that. And he said, the potentially bad news is I'm leaving City of Hope to start my own practice. And I just went, no. And he said, but the good news is you can choose to come with me and be a patient at my new practice. And just previous to that, maybe a couple of months before, I had actually gotten insurance. And it was like that perfect, perfect combination where he was leaving City of Hope and I had insurance. And so I followed him, and I was with him for almost 20 years. I think it was 18 years that I was a patient of his. So
this is such a heartwarming story.
I know.
I experienced a short glimpse of a doctor telling me that I'm going to die, but that's only that one night.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that people tend to do that for how many years?
I was in my early 20s when the last doctor said that to me, when he said, you're not going to have a very good quality of life. The rest of your life isn't going to be very good. And it was always one of those things that I would look at him, and in my brain, I'm thinking, so tell me how to avoid that. Tell me what to do. And they would just say, sorry, we don't really know what to tell you to do. Take your insulin, try to exercise. And that was it. That was really all they had. And again, I don't hold it against the doctors. I'm not bitter about that, because what's the point in doing that? That was all they knew. That was all they knew at the time. But it was also that perfect timing that this doctor at this time in the late 80s, early 90s, diabetic care was exploding in a good way. All kinds of new technologies were coming along. All kinds of new information was out there. And so it was timing of where I was, where he was, and the bringing together of all of that really just converged at the right time for me. And it made such a huge impact on my life.
And then you have such a big heart also to want to continue and help other people. Well, I just find great joy in life in general. So I understand. And on top of that, I'm legally blind, sadly, because of the diabetes, because of it was, just unchecked for so long, but I still have great joy about life. And so I see an awful lot of people, and I meet them in different arenas where I can tell they're sad. They're feeling depressed. Diabetics oftentimes struggle with depression and anxiety, which I get. I really understand that. But because I had such a transformation, such a change, I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be happy about this. I want to help other people understand that there can be joy in life. Not saying that it's not hard. Of course it's hard. Yes.
But you got to do the work that is required in order to figure out how to go from that discouraged, anxiety-ridden situation over to, oh, okay, this, it could be worse, it could be better, but I'm all right with where I am right now. So
yeah. I think that as long as we're still breathing, there's hope.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. That's why every day I'm like, okay, here's another day. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Thank you so much. Yeah. So if you guys like this episode, come back, and until then, stay happy and hopeful. Thank you, Annette.
Thank you so much, too. This was great.
Thanks. So what do you think of the podcast format?
I love it. I love how, I remember you telling me this, that it's kind of like a power punch. it's short and to the point. And with people who have such busy schedules today,
yeah,
I mean, if they got the time to listen to an hour podcast, that's great. But I would think the majority don't.
yeah. And then if you notice, I don't spend the time to introduce at the beginning, because I rather put that on the actual description when people go to YouTube and Spotify.
Right. No, I love it. And I love that one question method. I think that is just such I don't know, a really, really intentional way of just getting to the heart of the matter really quickly. And that's super important. I mean, even in coaching, that's something that we practice, and we work at, when we're with a client, a lot of times they're not quite sure what's going on, and we have to figure it out by asking questions. But that's a really great one question method of, a time in your life when there was a major transition. I'm going to borrow that if you don't mind.
No, take it. And then I'm going to ask you one question again.
Okay, one more.
Which is completely unrelated. Who's your favorite celebrity?
Oh my goodness. I'm not really, while I love movies and I love TV and stuff like that, I tend not to be a favorite kind of person. But I will say, and this just totally will reveal my geekiness, if you will. I became, about 10-12 years ago, I discovered the Marvel comic book movie series, and I loved them. I loved all of the Marvel comic book movies. And when I watched, the Avengers, all these different things. But when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, the character, his name is Peter Quill, and oh my gosh, Chris Pratt is the actor who plays that character. And I mean, I've only seen him in a couple of things, but in the Marvel ones, but I don't know. I just think he's funny. I love him in the scenes and in the movies and all of that. But I don't know that he's my favorite, because I don't really have a favorite, but I enjoy watching him.
Well, him playing like music from the 80s or something, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. All the movies open up with some song from the 70s and 80s, and they play. Yeah, and that's another reason I love it. Yeah, because that's my music.
Actually, he did act in a very serious movie. I don't remember the name off the top of my head. Yeah, that he played a very serious character. I will find the link and share with you after this podcast. Yeah, he did.
Yes, because I've only seen him in fun roles.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, all right. Yeah. So that was fun. That was fun. Yeah. So thank you so much, and maybe I'll invite you back and then talk more about your program. Sounds good?
Oh, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Chu, so much. I was talking to somebody the other day about, business and how you do it. And they said, one of the best ways to get your name out there is become a guest on a podcast. And I was like, I'm doing that. And so that was a method of marketing that they were recommending to me. And I'm like, I love it. I love doing that. So and you're providing a great service. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then as a host, I call this my community service because I host this podcast that has nothing to do with my business. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So then I get to help
Which is
post a
interesting.
story. Yeah. Like basically my whole intention is to lift the world with more positivity, with more hopes. Yeah. So,
Thank you. Thank you for that. That is great.
yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share. See you soon at Your Win Podcast.